I'm Matt Puglisi. I'm the Executive Director of the Office of Community Development with the Department of Economic and Community Development. And I'm joined by Melinda Wilson, Assistant Director for the Community Investment Fund, and Paniota Cabaldi, our Administrative Assistant. We will be doing a Q&A at the end of the session today. Please submit your questions through the Q&A module, but please just wait until we get going for a little while, as we'll probably answer many of your questions during the presentation. We are recording the webinar. We will post the webinar on the application page. No paywall, free to watch as many times as you want. So the Community Investment Fund, this is a 5-year program with up to $175 million to be awarded each year. There are 2 application rounds per year. This is the 4th round. So there are going to be 6 rounds remaining after this. The round 5 will open in May with a June deadline. And again, we're trying to keep the timeline consistent on these. So there will be a December deadline and a June deadline for the remainder of the program. So we're going to walk through an overview of the program, highlight changes, go through the timeline and the process to apply, and some lessons learned, and then take Q&A at the end. We realize that many that are joining us today might be very familiar with the process for application and review, but there are always new organizations and new communities that are joining. If you have very specific questions today during the Q&A, it's best to send those via email to us at communityinvestmentfund@ct.gov, or to schedule a time to speak with a team member through the website. You can reserve a one-on-one conversation. And then finally, DECD serves as the administrator of the CIF program. The Community Investment Fund Board of Directors will be making the decision on which grants to recommend to the governor for funding. So the CIF team is here to help you put your best foot forward in your application, so please take advantage of that. So I'll just start with looking back at round 3. The board made $101 million in awards to 21 different projects across 16 municipalities, and 6 towns received their first awards through the program. The program continues to be very competitive, as you can see in the stats there on the left side. We encourage anybody to visit our website on the About the Fund page. You can read through the funded project descriptions. Right now, we're looking at roughly 13% of all projects that have been submitted have received funding. This doesn't mean right now that this is the only types of projects that are going to be funded, but I think it'll help you get a sense of what has resonated and emerged as competitive applications. Through the first 3 rounds, 40% have been awarded to projects that are municipal applications, and 60% of awards have been to projects that are nonprofit or community development corporation applications. In the first 2 rounds, about 40% of the awards made had been partial awards, and this was down to 23% of round 3 awards as partial awards. So there was more full funding that went to projects in round 3. And we often get questions as to, is there a sweet spot that we should be asking for in terms of the amount of money? And really, we can't tell you enough. Put the amount of funding that you need to get the project done. The largest award given so far has been $22.5 million. And the smallest award was a partial award for $155,000 for the planning component of a project. So it just gives you a sense of the range. So we want to start to make everyone aware of the Community Investment Fund change policy. And this was approved at the board meeting on September 26th. And we've had a large number of awards in round 1 that during the contracting process brought changes from the original project forward for our consideration. And again, DCD administrators, we're not making the decision here. So in consultation with the board, we developed a change policy. So why are we starting with this at the beginning? It's because please keep this in mind. If you bring an application forward, you want to know what it is that you're doing. The grant award is made on what you present in your application. And if there is a change, if you're not ready to move forward, then it is not the right time to apply. You want to eliminate as many variables as possible. So we understand that things happen in the course of a capital project. The intent here is not to say that all change or slight change is unacceptable, but we want to make sure that the CIF board, based on what you presented and the governor and the State Bond Commission have approved, that is the project that is moving forward. So any change request that you're going to have, you're going to need to provide your project manager that information in writing to address the information that you're seeing here on the screen. A substantial change is being defined as any change to the original project scope and outcomes, budget, or leverage funds that is quantified as a loss of 20%. Any change to a budget that creates a gap in the capital stack will be considered a substantial change. Technical change is a process in and of itself, and that will have to go back to the CIF board and the State Bond Commission. So we're going to just look, make sure my screen's right. So any project that is saying that we can't move forward and complete the project because we need more CIF funding, that's not a decision that we can make. If you need more CIF funding, you need to submit an application for that request through a competitive round. Any change to your project that's inconsistent with the State Bond Commission agenda, then that will need to go back to the board and back to the State Bond Commission for approval. So before the grant contract is executed, which is where we're going to probably have the most changes coming in. Let's look at this. You'll have a change request. DCD will review it. If it's more than a 20% change, then your award will be deallocated and you'll have to reapply to another competitive round for consideration. If it's less than a 20% change, DCD will make a recommendation, and then the commissioner of DCD can make a decision as to whether or not that is going to move forward. All right, so now getting into the projects. Overview of eligibility. Just want to be clear, this has not changed. Municipalities are public investment communities and alliance districts. There's no difference if your community is a public investment community, an alliance district, or both. So any of the applicants that can apply are either the municipality or a nonprofit organization or community development corporation, which operates within those municipalities. All of the current eligible communities stay eligible for the 5 years of the program. So if a community drops off the list for public investment or alliance districts, you retain eligibility. And every year we update the list in July if there are any new communities, but no communities were added this past July to this list. So it's the same 55 communities that you see here on the map. So eligible projects. Eligible projects must do two things. You promote economic or community development, and then the second piece is such project or grant and aid furthers the consistent and systematic, fair, just, and impartial treatment of all individuals, including individuals who belong to underserved and marginalized communities that have been denied such treatment, such as Black, Latino, and Indigenous, and Native American persons, Asian Americans and Pacific Islanders and other persons of color, members of religious minorities, lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, and queer persons, and other persons comprising the LGBTQ+ community, persons who live in rural areas, and persons otherwise adversely affected by persistent poverty or inequality. So we just want to stress here that projects should have community involvement and input. We are looking for transformational projects that have new outcomes or increased outcomes. And we're looking for intentionality. And we continue through 2 rounds to see applicants struggling with this. But when we talk about the underserved population that benefits from the program, we're looking for there to be an intentional link to this population and how it is going to directly benefit the target population. moving forward. It doesn't mean that the only people that can benefit are the target underserved population, but you need to be able to draw a straight line to that. Project categories. So there are three main project areas. First, capital improvements. These could be brownfields, affordable housing, infrastructure improvements, climate resiliency, pedestrian safety and traffic calming improvements, land acquisition, building acquisition, and capital projects to construct, rehab, renovate any public facilities, home rehabilitation programs, or construct new facilities, including libraries and senior centers. Then there is the small business support program. And we can't emphasize this enough. This is not a grant program for small businesses to apply directly. This is for a nonprofit, community development corporation, or a municipality to establish, to create some sort of small business support program. And that program could be a revolving loan program, microloans, gap financing. The only case in which it can be a grant is if it is a grant for startup funds to establish a small business in the municipality. And the municipality needs to be an eligible municipality. For the planning area, planning grants, you really want to make sure that you communicate here what the end result is that you're trying to study. It's a $250,000 grant to develop the vision for this proposal. We hope that this proposal would be a capital project. And so the money is there for you to do community engagement studies, engineering, initial conceptual architectural plans, so that you can come up with a budget, that you can come up with outcomes, that you've determined feasibility, that you've developed community support, that you can connect it to the underserved target population and how they're going to benefit. The goal here with these planning grants is that the award is going to help you as an applicant get farther along in the process so that you can come back in a future round with a capital project request that is more shovel ready, or you can be competitive in other state and federal grant programs for capital project funding. Project budget. So the minimum community investment fund grant request is $250,000. The minimum capital and small business program budget is $1.5 million. And just want to stress this was changed before round 3, and we saw several applications that were resubmitted thinking that they could just resubmit and didn't pay attention to this and were ruled ineligible. So if you don't have a 1.5 million minimum budget, you're not going to be able to be eligible. If you don't need at least $250,000, you're not a fit for the program. Please complete the CIF Round 4 Sources and Uses budget form that's available on the application page and fill in all the details. And again, there is no limit to the grant amount that you're requesting. So prioritization. In the CIF authorizing legislation, prioritization is given for the 4 points that you see up on the screen now. So no changes here. This is staying the same. So we have the municipality has implemented local hiring preferences pursuant to Section 7-112 of the General Statutes. The applicant has or will leverage municipal, private, philanthropic, or federal funds for the project. So on these leveraged funds, state funding is not considered leverage. And then going a little bit further past spending that you have taken, that you've made. We are willing to take a broad view of a project. There's no set timeline. So for example, if you spent money on environmental phase 1 and phase 2 assessments of a property that you're looking to clean up and redevelop, and that was 2-3 years ago, and the request now is for the actual remediation, abatement, and redevelopment of the project property, okay. But if you spent money doing a facility assessment 15 years ago and now are looking to build a new community center with that information, we're not going to look at that as expenditure that is going to be considered leverage, because that 15-year-old community facility assessment is probably no longer relevant. In terms of letters of support, so the letter of support from a General Assembly specifically applies to a municipal project, as does this prioritization for leverage and the 7-112. So on the letter of support, please make sure you communicate now with your General Assembly members. We will not accept a letter for a reapplication that is an old letter. We want to make sure that the letter of support shows that your General Assembly member is currently actively supporting the project as it's represented in your application. So please ask them now, not at the last minute in December. The legislator does not need to support your project. It is your responsibility to communicate the impact, the importance of your project, to win their support. They are your champion in this process, so please keep in communication with them. For community development corporations and nonprofits, you can provide a General Assembly member of support, or letter of support, I should say, but it does not give you that statutory prioritization. The only prioritization that applies to a nonprofit and a community development corporation is the project labor agreement to employ ex-offenders or individuals with physical, intellectual, or developmental disabilities. And specifically, it asks for the project labor agreement, not a pledge to have a project labor agreement. So DECD also for small business support programs, which have been in a small minority of applications that have been submitted. But we are required to look at certain other factors here, and that needs to be detailed in the application. And this is looking at the risk of default on the payment of proposed loans, the impact on job creation or retention, the impact on blighted properties, and the overall impact on the community. And we want to make sure that programs align with small business financing best practices. For anybody that is looking to be competitive here in an application, proposals that are already duplicative of the Small Business Boost program or other funding that is being done on a municipal or regional level to support small businesses, you're not going to be competitive in this program. We're looking for you to be the expert in the area, to identify the gap that exists and use that information to make a more compelling application. So all applications are going to be we're going to be assessing DECD best practices. And these include strong project readiness, leveraging funding, realistic, comprehensive budgets, limiting soft costs, and a comprehensive project plan. And I'll just talk through a couple of these a little bit more plainly in terms of what it means, the types of questions that we're looking for you to answer with your application and your materials. So strong project readiness. What approvals and components do you have that you can move forward? Where is your design, your engineering, your permitting? Are your construction documents at 30% or more completion? Do you need local zoning approvals, or have you already secured local zoning approvals? Those are the types of questions that we're answering. Also, the Connecticut state bidding, contracting, and procurement procedures are required for these funds. So Stating that you have your contractors selected and lined up already is not what we're looking for in terms of strong project readiness. Also, look at the timeline. We often see that we need money next month because we're so ready to go. And if we don't have the money next month, we're going to miss out on being able to do this project. We're looking for a project timeline that is that fits the process. Realistically, awards are not going to be, recommendations won't be made by the board until March 14th. And so a final decision on award could be as late as May 14th. So if you need to access funds in December or January, this is not going to seem like a strong project fit for this program. Leveraging funding. So we're looking at non-state funds that are committed to the projects here. So municipal, federal, private. Provide the backup. Grant award letters, term sheets from the bank for financing, anything that lets us know that you actually have secured these funds versus what is pending or to be applied for. And what you commit here to the project is what we expect you to have available when it comes to the grant contract. In terms of your realistic and comprehensive budget, how did you determine your budget? Did you take prevailing wage into account? Did you speak with architects, estimators, construction professionals? Are you using up-to-date estimates? Limiting soft costs. So Community Investment Fund does not have a prohibition saying that there can be no soft costs paid for with the grant funds. However, we're looking at 15% of the grant request as the bar that we use when we say that they've limited soft costs. We understand that there's soft costs to every project. We don't want to see the state funds being used towards soft costs. So if you can pay for the soft costs on your project with other sources, that's the best way to approach the budgeting process. And I just want to go back to leveraging funding and just, we get this question over and over again. There is no requirement for leveraged funding. There is no match. There is no ratio, but we're looking for you to bring whatever funds you can towards a project to be competitive. And then finally, comprehensive project plan. So we're really looking for a project plan that is about not just your construction project, but also for operations once the project's done. How have you determined feasibility? How have you determined that your outcomes will occur? If you're looking to build a brand new facility, what is your pro forma plan to run the facility so that we're not building a building that's closed and shuttered in 2 years? We're also looking at any municipal applications. We're looking at how your project aligns with your plan of conservation and development. That's not something that we're asking nonprofits to assess. Also, in terms of state requirements, if you're a municipality and you need to request a waiver from OPM for the eligibility to request discretionary state funding, please, you need to do that now so that you have it from OPM when the application is submitted. And please, also, you need to do that for every grant application that you're submitting. We had some municipalities that made one request and submitted multiple applications. And so that that waiver request did not apply to all of their applications. And then on the Connecticut Economic Action Plan, these are the four main areas: workforce, communities, innovation, business environment. And look, every project doesn't touch on all of these. We're looking for you to connect and make a strong connection to the area or areas that are relevant and fit with your project, not to do some sort of dance and reach to show how it might connect to all four. So in terms of the DECD assessment, we're also looking at the State Historic Preservation Office, SHPO, and we'll evaluate if your project has any potential effect on historic structures. We are not looking for a determination from SHPO in advance on your project. But if you have a building that is over 50 years of age or you're going to be disturbing green space, ground that hasn't yet been developed, we encourage you to reach out and have a conversation with the State Historic Preservation Office in advance. Until there is a commitment of state funds to your project, SHPO does not need to make a determination in advance, but they can give you some guidance in terms of if your project is going to have an impact or not, and some of the things that you might want to consider taking into account. We ask every project to submit a SHPO project review cover form. We will submit this then to SHPO if your project is funded, but that way we have all of the information submitted that SHPO is going to need. If you've already received a SHPO determination letter, please include that with your application materials. And know also that SHPO is consulted in our review of applications. So another process that all of the CIF grants are subject to is the Connecticut Environmental Policy Act, and the information is available here. The slide deck will be posted so you can access this link, but SEPA scoping may be necessary for a funded project. DECD staff will post that notice in the environmental monitor, and the CIF application does ask you to accept costs that are associated with SEPA scoping should it be deemed necessary. Prevailing wage. So we, again, need to emphasize that like all DECD grant programs, per state statute, prevailing wage may be required for projects that receive DECD funding. So in general, the trigger is $1 million of DECD funding, but DECD doesn't make this determination. The Department of Labor does. So we advise you to reach out to the Department of Labor and ensure that you receive a formal determination of the applicability of prevailing wage rates for your project. Mary Toner is the contact, and her information's here. And we're also happy to connect you directly to her. It's also, her contact information is in the FAQ document posted on our application page. But keep this information in mind, talk with DOL, and use that when you're developing your realistic and comprehensive budget. And also, if you receive DECD funding, another clarification here with prevailing wage, it applies to the entire project, not just to the DECD grant funds. So our review process. So all eligible applicants are going to submit applications via the CIF website. We will go through and DECD will determine that they're eligible applications. We review and summarize according to all the points we just discussed. We prepare an executive summary. Anybody that has already applied, you've seen the executive summary. We provide those to every applicant when each round is done, so you have that information. The board receives both the executive summary that DECD has prepared and your full application materials. The board reviews them. We provide our reviews to the board generally about 4 to 5 weeks in advance. And then the board makes recommendations. Once they make these recommendations, they go to the governor, who has the ability to either remove applications from the, or remove recommendations from the list, or present all of the projects to the State Bond Commission for approval. So your grant award is not approved until the State Bond Commission votes its approval for the project. So the timeline that we have here. So application material is all up, the NOFA, Notice of Funding Availability, the application instructions. We encourage you to read these documents fully. They are available on the application page of our website. The portal button should be going up today to allow you to access the portal. There is a different portal for the capital grant, for the small business grant, and for the planning grant. So make sure that you're using the right application type. There are Word versions posted as well, so you can see all of the application questions outside of the portal and work to prepare answers, in the same order. The CIF board will meet on March 12th to make recommendations. And then within 60 days, the governor will place the round 4 applications onto the State Bond Commission agenda. Round 5 will open in May of 2024. So in terms of how to apply, again, everything is posted. We will take FAQs that we get through email and from this webinar. We'll update the FAQ document, but please, please, please read the notice of funding availability. Please read the application instructions. Please look at the full change policy that has been added to the policy and guidelines that were adopted by the board. All applications are submitted electronically online through the CIF website. No paper, email, hard copies accepted. Please do not email applications or attachments to us. We allow several types of attachments, and we've tried to, in each round, further update the types of required attachments for different types of applications. So again, that's in the NOFA and in the application instructions. To submit your applications, you're going to, or not your application, sorry, to submit your attachments, you're going to request a unique SharePoint folder by emailing communityinvestmentfund@ct.gov. Please indicate the email address of up to 2 members on your team that need access. All the attachments are going to be uploaded to the folder by noon on December 15th. After that time, afternoon, we remove your access to the folder. Please limit your file formats to JPEG, PDF, Word, and Excel. If you are an Apple Mac computer user, please make sure that you're using Word and Excel files, not Apple file formats. We can't access those. Also, please don't expect that if you're reapplying, we have all of the attachments already and we don't need them. We need you to update your attachments and provide us the most up-to-date. We want to make sure that we are not considering old information, that we're considering new and accurate information. So that responsibility is on you. There are some subtle changes to some questions on the application in this round. There's some reordering of questions to better align with kind of building upon the narrative that you're telling, seeking more and more detail on target stakeholders and how your proposed project meets the CIF mission. So, please read the questions. Don't just copy and paste what you submitted last time or in round 2 or round 1. We're looking for succinct and thorough responses. The questions have word limits. We think that this helps you as an applicant communicate the most important element of your project as clearly as possible. And then lastly, there is an updated CIF sources and uses budget form. That is required. You are welcome to provide an additional budget of your own format that goes into greater detail, but please submit the sources and uses budget form, and please submit it as an Excel document, don't save it as a PDF. Reapplications, please, you need to update those attachments. Your previous folder, again, does not roll over. And remember, all elected officials' letters of support need to be updated. So start that process now. Required attachments. So you'll request your SharePoint folder, and you're going to, again, put your application or your attachments directly into that folder. So for municipalities, in accordance with Connecticut General Statute 8-23 and amended by Public Act 15-95, any municipality that has not adopted a plan of conservation and development within the past 10 years is ineligible for discretionary state funding unless they request and receive a waiver from the prohibition by the OPM secretary. So municipalities please, if you need this, you need to request this waiver from OPM. Start the process now, and please request a waiver for each grant application that you're submitting. Municipalities also need to submit a municipal certification of eligibility for discretionary state funding. Municipalities need to submit a certified resolution to request funding from the appropriate body, boards of selectmen, mayor, board of finance, etc. For nonprofit organizations, community development corporations, we're asking you to have a resolution to request funding from your board of directors. Everybody needs the SHPO project notification form. What else? The CIF budget template. Again, please use the round 4 one that is posted. Please don't use the one you used in the last round. We've made some minor changes. There are some instructions in the form. Please use that. Please include the funder name and the status of your funding when you're filling this out. We also are asking for nonprofit and CDCs for a certificate of legal existence. You can think of this as your letter of good standing. You can request one at the Secretary of State's website. This is linked in the application instructions and the notice of funding availability. If your organization has ever had a name change, please submit a standard certificate, not just the express version of this. So just want to look at some of the areas that we've seen now over 3 rounds and go over very quickly some of the lessons learned, common areas that applicants are struggling with. We've touched on some of these points, but it is worth emphasizing. So underserved audience identification. This is part of the basic eligibility for the CIF program, and we're really pushing everybody to be more intentional in your response. We've often still seen communities that say we're a public investment community and we're eligible, so we have underserved populations. That's true, but it's not intentional. So we're asking you to be intentional in your thought. That is what we have heard from the Community Investment Fund Board. Also, oh, sorry about that. Also, please involve the community in your project. At the September meeting, co-chair Speaker Ritter talked about the Town of Windsor's project that had been submitted in both rounds 1 and 2, and talked about the work that the town had done over that time to involve the community more in the process and to further flesh out the project. I think that really shows the importance of how the board is looking at these projects and these applications. And then again, transformative projects. And we say transformative a lot, and we're looking for new outcomes or increased outcomes. And so often for anyone that has applied, when you're looking at the executive summary that we've given you, applicants want to talk about their weaknesses. It's just as important to look at the target outcomes and impacts, because if you don't see in those target outcomes and impacts what it is that you're trying to do, how you're going to change your town, how you're going to change Connecticut, these underserved people's lives, then you're not doing a good job communicating that. So please talk about what it is that is going to come out, how you define success. And again, so programmatic expenses, we are not eligible. This is capital hard costs, and soft costs can be funded, but not operating expenses. So we can build a workforce training center. We can build an after-school childcare center, but we can't fund the staff. We can't pay for rent. We can't pay for utilities, only the capital expenses. And then also coming up with your feasibility and sustainability. And that's really, we have a lot of requests to buy a building for the first time for a nonprofit, or to build a new facility. We need to understand how you're going to be able to continue to afford to operate that facility, especially if you have not owned and managed a building in the past. And operating expenses, building in operating expenses, whether that's new staff because you're expanding your facility, or salaries, partial salaries for existing staff because of the project. That's not what we're looking to fund with CIF. So a couple of little things that we'll just go over that make things simple. So for example, combine all of your files of the same type into one PDF. So don't submit 30 individual attachments that are different letters of support. It makes it easy as we're reviewing things for us to miss something. Merge all of your letters of support into one file. Or if you have multiple letters showing funding awards for different grants, you could merge those all into one file. It just makes it easier for us, is what we found, and we don't want to miss things. Write in clear, succinct, plain language. Just tell us what it is that you're going to do. Sometimes it's so hard to pick through the rhetorical language that is being used, that it's really hard to ascertain what the project really is. Please use short file names. We recognize that everybody is trying to be really accurate when they're using long file names, but find ways to use abbreviations and really state like the meat of what the attachment is, because when we have really long file names, it causes corruptions in the file format sometimes, and we're not able to access things, and creates a lot of back and forth making sure that we can view your attachments. Please name your files consistently. Please don't use whatever the auto-generated file is when you scan a document, because then we don't know what it is. And again, that creates the opportunity for us to miss something that's important. Use the new budget. Save it as an Excel, not a PDF. It clearly answer the question that's asked. This is not a situation where if you don't have an answer to that question, if your project isn't far enough along, if it's not something that you can fully address, so be it. But it's better for you to answer the question than to seem like you're intentionally dodging the question. And I think finally, make sure that when you're writing your overall project summary, which is one of the first questions that we ask you about, make this your elevator pitch. You're in the elevator with the board chairs and you're trying to get them to understand what the project is in 90 seconds. Don't give us a 5-paragraph history of your organization. You have a chance to talk about that in other places. So you see the opposite here. And I think I've really covered all of this already, but it's there as a helpful reminder when you're looking at this slide deck preparing your application. So with that, we can turn things over to the Q&A model. You can email questions at any time to communityinvestmentfund@ct.gov. And please, you can schedule a one-on-one 30-minute meeting with multiple members of the CIF team. Please take advantage of that opportunity. And with that, I will kick it to Melinda.
Great. Okay, we've had some really great questions come in. One thing I'd like you to clarify for everyone, Matt, is the minimum CIF request, the planning budget, and the minimum capital budget.
Sure thing. So for a planning grant, it's a $250,000 grant. The minimum request should be $250,000. For a capital project, the minimum request is $250,000. The minimum budget is $1.5 million.
Okay, so clarification on attachments. And I'm going to just answer this one and save you the trouble, Matt. If your for combining files into one PDF, please put letters of support together. You can please put other items like awards, confirmation of other funding letters together. Don't put all of your attachments in one giant PDF, but put like attachments into one PDF for us. It makes it a lot easier. And I'm going to reiterate a little something on that. Please try to use small file names. Abbreviate, your nonprofit, or just use the name of your municipality. Don't need to write out, town of, just put your municipality, things like that. Matt, will you be, or will Paniota be emailing out a PDF of the slides as well as posting on the website?
Yeah, we can email out a PDF of the slides to everybody that is registered. That's easy enough to do, but we'll have them posted on the website, and the recording of the webinar will be posted on the application page of the website.
So can we address SHPO forms for previous applicants and for planning grants?
Yes, we definitely can. So SHPO forms are not needed for planning grants. For reapplications, I would say you can use the original SHPO form, just reattach it so that it's included in the application folder. The only thing that could change is that depending on your project, you could have received another state grant, for example, from the Connecticut Office of the Arts. That might now mean that SHPO is able to make progress on your determination versus a previous round. So all you need to do is provide the SHPO project notification form, and if you have anything new from SHPO, like a letter of determination.
Right, thank you. Can you clarify for everyone reapplication process as opposed to, well, in conjunction with entities that may have received partial funding in the past, how they would go about that?
Okay, good question. So if you have received partial funding in the past towards a project, you can apply for additional funding towards the same project. I would say that in that case, I would definitely recommend setting a one-on-one with the CIF team so we can talk through the best way to position it based on the specific details of your project.
Can you clarify for everyone if they need to update all letters of support between rounds?
The ones that we absolutely require to be updated are from elected officials. So if you have a letter from your mayor or your board of selectmen, if you have letters from your General Assembly, your state representative, your state senator, or any federal letters of support. And again, the prioritization for the municipal applications is a letter of support from your Connecticut General Assembly member, your state representative, your state senator, not the federal delegation.
So along that vein, can you speak to the getting a letter of support from members of the General Assembly in all towns that would be served by the project as opposed to just where the facility may actually be?
So good question. If you operate a facility that is serving target population that comes from other CIF communities as well, then there's no issue with having letters of support from any General Assembly member that represents people that are served by the project. There is nothing in the statute around prioritization that says multiple letters of support from different General Assembly members gives you more prioritization or less prioritization. What I would encourage you to do is make sure that if your organization, if your entity and this project really do serve all of the people in multiple municipalities, it's important for you to make sure that you communicate with all of those General Assembly members so that they realize how the project affects their constituents and they can be an advocate for you and your project.
Great. Can you review quickly the types of things that are covered under a planning grant? What sorts of activities?
Let me see if I can just go back. One more. Planning. So community engagement activities, any studies. So for example, it could be a feasibility study. It could be an environmental phase one. Engineering, architectural, to determine that the space is viable for what it is that you're looking to do. We're not looking to fund all architectural fees with the planning grant to move, say, from conceptual to 30%. That's not the goal of the planning grant, but it's to help you assess a building and make sure that the building is able to be laid out, renovated to do what it is that you want to do, and to help you develop a realistic budget so you know how much it's going to cost to do it.
Matt, can you address how folks might partner on an application and who should be the actual applicant?
Sure. So you can have a variety of partnerships. You can have two municipalities that are both eligible partner on a project. So for example, if there was a pedestrian bike trail that went between two communities that you were looking to make sure that you filled in all of the gaps so that residents would be able to safely travel, that could be a potential partnership. A municipality can partner with a for-profit partner on a project. The municipality, therefore, should be the lead applicant if they're going to partner with a for-profit developer, for example. A nonprofit and a municipality can partner on a project together. So for an example that I might think of there is a renovation to a nonprofit facility and then streetscape improvements that might happen in the same area. In that situation, I think it comes down to capacity. Depending on the nonprofit, depending on the municipality, since you're both eligible applicants and you're both in an eligible municipality, it really comes down to capacity. Which organization has the capacity to be the lead applicant and to administer the grant? And again, in those kind of partnership situations, I would suggest scheduling a call sooner than later with the CIF staff and make sure that you have all of the parties that are going to be partnering on this so that nobody has to play telephone in terms of relaying the discussion.
Great point, Matt. Multiple applications by the same applicant in a round.
Yes, there's no prohibition on any applicant from submitting more than one application in a round. However, we have so much time and you have so much time. So I would say that if you, we haven't seen any single applicant receive more than 2 awards in one round. I think we saw one city get 2 partial grants in this third round. So my advice would be, if you're going to submit 4 applications in one round, you're not going to see all 4 funded. So it makes more sense to concentrate on the ones that you really want and need to move forward, because otherwise what will happen is the board may come back and send the CIF staff to talk to you and say, which is the project that you really want to go forward. Or if you could have a project that's number one on your list, but it's not number one on the board's list, and that might not be the direction that you want it to go. But if you've submitted it for consideration, be prepared for that project to suddenly become your community's priority. So again, that's something that we're happy to help you walk through. We understand sometimes there's a variety of considerations that a town has, and as they're looking at funding sources and project prioritization, but that would be my guidance.
Great. One more here. If an applicant has already received state bond funding towards a project, how does that interact with a CIF application?
So, good question. There is no prohibition from your project receiving an Urban Act award or some other legislative bond award for your project, and then receiving a community investment fund. If you have already received bond funding for your project, it's important to communicate that. It is asked specifically, but it's also important to communicate really the justification for why additional state dollars are needed to make this project happen. And then the same thing goes with other state grants. So for example, if you've received brownfield remediation grants, there's no prohibition from that being part of the project's capital stack towards this project and being commingled with CIF funds. Same with SHPO tax credits for projects or other grants from DECD and any other state grant program. I think that as we've gone on longer in this, and as the board has become more used to the process, there's been more conversation with other state agencies as to, is this program a good fit for CIF, or is this a better fit for existing programs? And, housing is one that is really easy for me to call out. The Department of Housing has different funding mechanisms, and CHAFA have different funding mechanisms and programs. And if you're coming to CIF with a project that is housing first, we encourage you to have a conversation with DOH first, because lots of times that DOH grant program is a better fit, and it doesn't come with the same prevailing wage requirements that the DECD funds. So you might end up finding that that is a better straight line way to solve your project problem.
Okay, last one. We've had several folks asking about the amount of time with which they would have to perform on a planning grant.
So there's not a set amount of time on any of the CIF grants, capital, planning, or otherwise. On the planning side, though, we would say that we're looking for these activities to be completed generally in less than a year. We expect that most of these activities are probably in the 6 to 8 month range, based on prior experience and the time of these types of activities, because we want you to be able to come back in a subsequent round. So that's the intent and the push for this to be in under a year.
But an applicant could request, for their own reasons, that it be an 18-month process.
An applicant could request. It doesn't mean that that request would go forward, and we would expect and consider it, based on the justification that you provide. Great. So thank you all for the questions. We appreciate you taking the time. And again, please feel free to reach out to the CIF team at our email and schedule a one-on-one 30-minute meeting. We can't say enough through 3 rounds in terms of just, we can tell the difference between applications that have taken the time to meet with us, to ask questions, and to best position their application using that 30-minute meeting. So we don't bite. We really look forward to talking with you. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks.